Now here, see, this is my temperature gauge, and you can see on the back side of it, it has this. Well, this was a mechanical temperature gauge, so the other end of this would have gone into a motor, and somebody cut that off when they took it out. This voltmeter, I could go ahead and hook it up, but it probably only needs, if one end of that's grounded, it probably only needs one wire to make it work. And it may just be grounded right to that. So it could be that if I touch that to that battery right there, to the hot side, we can see the volts. Let's try it. I got a piece of wire right here. Piece of wire right here. Put this wire to that wire. Put this to that. Look at that. That works. Now, that's the gauge right there. So you watch that gauge and I'll touch this to the battery. Can you see that move right there? I think I need to put a flashlight in my mouth to help you see that. Hey, I'll be holding this flashlight in my mouth so I can't talk while I show you this, but this is what I want you to see. I don't know if you can see that or not. So all I was doing is touching one end of this wire to this and the other one to that. So what I could do is, in fact, I could take this wire and run it to the back side of the ignition switch right here. That would do the same thing. And I should have fire going to that down there. Right there. If I run this wire right there, and that would work that. So that's an easy one to fix up. Temperature gauge isn't all that necessary. I want one on there, but it's not as important as oil pressure, because the oil pressure gauge will leak if I don't have something in it. So that means I need to get down the box full of gauges over here. Actually got a few boxes full of gauges, so let's them all up. So I see right here, here's a temperature gauge right there. So that's the one that's going to want to be in the Rambler. I can also use that one in this car, because this should fit into that right there. So I'm going to want an oil pressure gauge, which is what this is, and that's a good Stewart Warner oil pressure gauge, I do believe. And I've got a here's another oil pressure gauge. And here's another oil pressure gauge. So I've got 3 of these. I know that was a Stewart Warner because it's marked on there. I kind of like the old school look of this one. And I've also got this is the copper attachment wire that hooks that up. I may have some more of that in here, I don't know. Got a bunch of stuff. But we'll just walk around here to have a quick look at the back of this here. So this piece here is going to fit in there. In fact, I'll go ahead and pop that out. This little bit right here is going to go right there, and you can see how hard that is to reach back in there to get that in. And you can imagine how difficult it would be if this engine was in the car and you were hanging over the motor and trying to do this. Obviously, that wouldn't be too easy to do. Okay, so what goes on top of that is, so this is going to go, let's see what the end of this looks like. Down in there. and this little cap's going to go right over it. So this will go like that, right there, and this little cap thing goes right over the top of it, takes that down. You get a little bitty, I think that's 3/16. Now the other end of that goes to the gauge over here, so I'm going to go grab a gauge. I think I'll probably use this gauge because it's not a exceptionally awesome gauge, and I'll show you what I mean by that. This probably works fine, but unlike this gauge, this is a Stewart Warner with the Stewart Warner emblem on it, and this one has, I don't know what this is, but it's, you know, this would be like a hardware store gauge back in the day. You could buy that up at Western Auto. You had to go to the parts store and pay real money to get the Stewart Warner. Well, I'm going to want the Stewart Warner in the Rambler, but this store would be perfect for this thing, this engine rack. So what I can do with it is I can put that gauge right here and bring this wire over to that. See, this still has the old, let's just take off what needs to come off. So I'm going to take, this is the cap that was on that one, and there's an old piece inside of this one. See, that's the piece that was on the back of this gauge, and it was put into a probably a plastic hose. In fact, I could use a plastic hose on this one, but because I want to use this metal line in my Rambler. If I had a piece of plastic hose, I could just run a piece over to that. Let me think about this. Well, I don't know. I guess I could change that later. So we're gonna take those two little pieces right there. We're gonna set them over here with this other piece and make sure that we put all of these pieces. In fact, I did see a little plastic bag while ago, so I'm gonna start putting pieces in plastic bag here. That way we'll have them when we need them next time. Put that in there. So we'll take these little tiny pieces. I think what I'll do is get me a little tiny socket to fit those. It'll make it a lot easier to work with. Put it in my mouth like I did a while ago. I can put it right here. Put that flashlight right there. That way maybe you can see that. And then this gauge here will go, I can pull this out. This is a light, which I may not even need on here. I doubt if I'll ever be doing any night driving in my motor stand. You know what I mean? So these little pieces, little nuts I'm taking off, just want to make sure I don't lose them or drop them, because they're going to turn around and put them right back on here. So this goes like this, and this goes like this. Now the tricky part with my little fingers, where I put these on here and not drop them, get this nut, go on that. Oh yeah, one side. I'll do the same thing over here on the other side. Put this right here. Put this nut on top of that, like that. Now, for all intents and purposes, I should be able to spin this thing over and see oil pressure as soon as I get this last part hooked up, this line, which has got to come through. The oil has to come through that line. What I might do is just pull this line over here like this. I might set you right about there. That way you can see that line. And come over here, and we'll just spin that starter. See if any oil starts coming out. take it a while to get there, but I might want to undo this over here just to make sure I got some coming up to there. The other thing I can do is take off the valve cover, see if we got oil under here. Don't see any. That's oh, you know what I don't have on here? I didn't keep that up. I'm surprised I hadn't seen any oil though. I don't have an oil filter on there. I should have oil in the motor though, right? Let's take a look. Well, do I have oil in this motor? I don't see any. Maybe God didn't put any oil in it. That would explain why I don't see any coming out. So what I need to do is get an oil filter, put on there. And I've got, let's see, what I got here. Got one here, but I thought this one was for Dodge truck. There's no oil in it. Something coming out of there. Fire. Looks like water. Is that water? Oh heck yeah. As long as I got water in the oil pan. Got a little. Maybe that's from the trip. I'm glad I did that. Didn't have much, but it had some. Alright. He did haul that up here in the back of his truck without a, you know, intake manifold and all that. So I just leave that out. We'll let that run out. That's a good place to stop though. And I'll come back to this tomorrow. We'll put oil in it. We'll put a filter on it. We'll run it and let it pump up some oil pressure and all that stuff. I'll stick this rag down here to soak up any oil that does come out. So I suppose I can